The streets of St. Petersburg were covered in a thin layer of frost, the evening lamps casting golden reflections on the cobblestones. Viktor Petrovich, a professor of philosophy at the prestigious university, walked briskly through the city square, his mind occupied with the day's lecture. His students had admired his discourse on morality, free will, and the nature of human suffering. He took pride in his knowledge, believing himself to be one of the most enlightened men in Russia. As he neared the steps of a grand old church, a voice interrupted his thoughts. "Spare a coin, sir." Victor turned to see a beggar wrapped in tattered wool, his beard thick with neglect, his hands trembling from the cold. His face, though lined with hardship, carried an unexpected serenity. The professor sighed. "If only you had studied. If only you had read books instead of begging, you wouldn't be in this state." The beggar chuckled, a deep, knowing laugh that unsettled Victor. "And if only you had lived, said, instead of just reading, you would not be so blind." Victor frowned. "What do you mean?" The beggar gestured to the empty step beside him. "Sit with me, professor, unless your knowledge prevents you from speaking to a man like me." Curious and slightly challenged, Victor sat down, pulling his coat tighter around him. "Tell me," Victor said, "what is it that you think I don't understand?" The beggar smiled, revealing missing teeth. "Tell me, professor, what do you teach?" "I teach philosophy, the great ideas of Socrates, Kant, Dostoevsky. I explore morality, justice, suffering." "Ah," the beggar said, "then surely you understand suffering well." "Of course," Victor replied confidently. "I have studied it for years." The beggar nodded. "And have you ever been hungry for days, professor? Have you ever lost everything you loved in a single night? Have you ever been treated as less than human?" Victor opened his mouth but found no words. The beggar continued. "You know suffering from books, but I know it from life." His voice carried no bitterness, only truth. "I once sat in university halls like yours, wore fine clothes like yours. I debated philosophy like you. But life," he exhaled, a cloud of mist escaping into the cold night air. "Life does not follow theories." Victor's curiosity deepened. "What happened now, Barsama, down to you?" The beggar's eyes darkened with memory. "A fire took my home. A plague took my wife and son. My business crumbled, and so did my place in society. No book prepared me for that." Victor swallowed hard. His lectures had explored these themes in abstraction, but here was a man who had lived them. The beggar continued, "Yet I have found wisdom in my suffering. I have learned patience, resilience, and gratitude. And you, professor, have spent years seeking truth in books, yet you cannot recognize it in a beggar on the street." Victor felt something shift within him, a realization that his knowledge, vast as it was, had not yet touched the depths of real human experience. Slowly he reached into his pocket, pulling out his wallet, but the beggar shook his head. "I do not need your money, professor. I needed you to listen." For the first time in years, Victor felt truly humbled. From that evening on, Victor's lectures changed. He spoke less of abstract theories and more of real human experiences. And every night he returned to the church steps, not to give charity, but to listen and learn from the man he once thought had nothing to teach.